talk primarily about Senator KRUEGER's bill, but I will also touch on the governor's bill, because there are really two components to equity. One is the application process, which was discussed pretty clearly about some of the issues with that. And that's been one where I think the governor's proposal has some good advances over Senator KRUEGER's bill that we would want to try to look at incorporating, primarily in more fully fleshing out the technical assistance side. We also have language that says you can't, that both bills not only say that participation in the illicit industry is not a bar on participation, but one of the goals is to bring people who've been participating in the illicit industry into the legal industry. They will need technical assistance, and they will need financial resources to do that. But the goal is not, if you're going to eliminate the illicit market, you don't just want to set up competition with people currently in the illicit market. You want to bring them in. They are also people from communities disproportionately impacted by the drug war. So it makes sense for them to be working legally in the industry and have opportunities to participate both at the employee level and at the owner level when possible. And that's one reason why protecting the retail market and separating it out from the producer market is one way that we're looking at in New York to try to create opportunities. Both bills envision both revolving loan funds and grants to applicants, and also developing technical assistance. Where the governor's bill is somewhat more advanced, I think, is it has a better funding mechanism through this allowing participation of the ROs. Another model that's been floated is creating a very expensive distributor license that you use to fund equity programs and keep everybody out of keep the ROs out of the retail market, but use money from a distributor license, which would be a more limited sector that ideally you might be able to make some significant money from. Then the second piece of equity is, what do you do with the money that comes in? And this is where I think the Senator KRUEGER's bill is much more clear about how that money is going to be used. And basically it divides the money, it takes some money off the top for research and looking at, how much it's impacted the illicit market, research in dangers and possible uses of marijuana, things like that, and how the program has been effective or not. And then it divides the rest of the revenue, and we are talking, there's some differences of opinion about how much it's going to be, but it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars annually, between three purposes. One is 50% of the revenue goes to community grants reinvestment fund, which will have a board established from state agencies and community participants. Doesn't sound totally different, different from what you're talking about, although this is specifically focused on the distribution of the money. And that money is, there are specific purposes outlined in Senator KRUEGER's bill: job training, adult education, youth development programming, establish or expand community centers, bolster reentry services for formerly incarcerated, and otherwise support community-focused programming in communities disproportionately impacted by the drug war. It also takes 25% of the revenue to direct it to the State Department of Education for educational services, trying to meet the state's long-delayed obligation to provide for a sound basic education. And then 25% is for both drug treatment programs and a public education campaign, which is aimed both at making sure that, again, marijuana is not there are harms associated with marijuana, and some people do develop dependency, and they need to have access to treatment. Secondly, we need to be educating people about those harms, and we need to be educating youth about the specific dangers. So we need a robust public education campaign to address those. So those are the purposes we use the money for. Turning quickly to the governor's, the governor establishes a similar list of purposes, but the problem is the people determining it are the executive director of the Office of Cannabis Management in consultation with the director of the budget, which we fear means the governor will be determining it. And it also lists out a bunch of good purposes, and then it says, or anything else that they want to use the money for. And that is where we have a lot of concerns about what the money would be used for. So I think I held to my 5 minutes, hopefully, and that's my brief take on it.